Chapter 1. The Joke That Wasn't. The dim, humming corridors of the rebel base nestled deep beneath the rocky spires of Caliban 4 were a far cry from the glittering starports and corporate citadels of the Dominion. Here, the air was thick with recycled oxygen, the metallic tang of machinery, and the unyielding scent of resolve, a resolve forged in desperation, desperation born from years of tyranny and bloodshed. In this claustrophobic underworld of steel and shadows, Lieutenant Kara Voss prepared herself for a mission that would come to define her beyond the mockery and casual dismissals of those who once called her a joke. The name Ghostfire had begun as a whispered jest, a derisive tag given during a careless moment, but tonight, that nickname would burn through the enemy lines like a blazing omen. Kara's quarters were Spartan and cold, lit by the faint glow of holographic schematics flickering against the bare metal walls. Her uniform lay folded with precision on the narrow cot, the insignia of the Orion Rebellion patched over a well-worn flight suit streaked with smudges of grease and scorch marks. Years of fighting had taught her that preparation was the only certainty in a universe governed by chaos and carnage. She moved with quiet efficiency, methodically checking her gear, a ritual she performed each time with the same solemnity and anchor in the storm. The sleek pulse rifle she had salvaged from a Dominion supply raid rested comfortably in her hands, its weight familiar, its cold metal reassuring. Beside it, a compact plasma detonator blinked softly, its red light pulsing like a heartbeat, a reminder that sometimes brute force was the only answer in this war. But Kara knew better than most that subtlety, stealth, and the careful weaving of shadows were her true weapons. Her thoughts drifted back to the moment the name, Ghostfire, was born, a moment of clumsy error that would become legend. During an early training simulation aboard the starship Valiant Spirit, she had been assigned to lead a recon team tasked with breaching a simulated Dominion base. The plan was straightforward. Use the stealth cloaks to infiltrate undetected, gather intel, and extract without a trace. But nerves and overeagerness had betrayed her. When a misfired plasma flare exploded prematurely, Kara found herself blinded and stumbling through the artificial corridors, the flare's intense light casting eerie shadows as she desperately fumbled to regain control. Her teammates had burst into laughter when the simulation shut down, dubbing her Ghostfire for her spectacular, fiery disappearance. At the time, she had felt nothing but embarrassment and a pang of anger. A joke. That's all she was. A mistake. A liability. Yet, beneath that mocking moniker lay the essence of what Kara was becoming. Ghostfire was no longer just a nickname, it was a symbol of unpredictability and resilience. Over months of grueling missions, whispered rumors had begun to spread among Dominion forces, stories of a ghostly figure appearing where no one expected, striking with the ferocity of fire and vanishing before retaliation. Enemy commanders shared fearful glances and tightened their protocols whenever Ghostfire was mentioned in intercepted comms. To them, she was no longer a joke. She was a nightmare. But the transformation from clumsy recruit to legendary operative had been neither swift nor easy. Kara's journey was carved from hardship, loss, and an unyielding desire to rewrite her fate. She had been born on Icarus 9, a mining colony nestled deep within the asteroid belt of a forgotten system. From a young age, Kara understood the bitter taste of oppression. The Dominion's corporate overlords siphoned wealth from the asteroid's veins while enslaving its people with crushing taxes and brutal enforcement squads. Her parents, simple engineers working to maintain the colony's failing infrastructure, were among the first casualties when the Dominion's enforcers arrived to quell a workers' strike. Kara had watched helplessly as they were dragged away, their pleas swallowed by the cold vacuum of space and the unfeeling bureaucrats who declared them enemies of progress. Alone, with only her sister to protect, Kara swore she would never bow to such tyranny. Her escape from Icarus 9 had been a gamble born of desperation. Smuggling herself aboard a freighter bound for Caliban 4, Kara entered the underbelly of the galaxy's resistance networks. There, in the sprawling maze of rebel enclaves, she found purpose, not just revenge, but the chance to fight for something greater than survival. Training was brutal, often pushing recruits to their breaking points, but Kara thrived in the chaos. Her instructors noted her uncanny ability to adapt, to think on her feet where others faltered. Yet, her past trauma haunted her. Visions of her family's fate sometimes shadowed her steps, fueling both her determination and moments of vulnerability. Within the ranks of the rebellion, trust was hard-earned, and skepticism was a daily companion. The nickname Ghostfire, initially a source of ridicule, became a shield and a weapon. Some comrades embraced it as a badge of honor. Others doubted the young lieutenant who had yet to prove herself on the battlefield. But Kara's defining moment came during a covert raid on a Dominion outpost deep in the Vortex Nebula. The mission was critical: seize encrypted data caches containing plans for the Dominion's latest weapon, the Obsidian Lance, a device capable of obliterating entire planets with precision strikes. Failure was not an option. As the rebel strike team slipped through the dense ion storms that cloaked the outpost, Kara's leadership was tested to its limits. The Dominion's patrols were heavier than expected, the outpost's defenses a labyrinth of automated turrets and lethal sentries. Communications were jammed, and the element of surprise was slipping away like grains of cosmic dust. With dwindling options, Kara made a daring choice. Instead of retreating, she ordered a risky diversion using the plasma detonator to create a controlled explosion in the storage bay. The blast threw the Dominion forces into chaos, buying precious moments to hack into the data vault. But the explosion ignited more than just alarms. It set off a cascading chain reaction in the volatile fuel tanks. Smoke and fire engulfed the facility as Kara's team scrambled to escape. In the chaos, she became separated, trapped behind enemy lines, the inferno swallowing the corridors she had just navigated. It was in those desperate moments, under the crushing weight of isolation and imminent death, that Kara's true transformation began. Relying on her wit, agility, and a deep knowledge of Dominion tech, she hacked dormant security bots and rerouted power to create distractions, slipping through flames and shadows alike. Her pulse rifle sang a deadly lullaby in the dim corridors, and every step was a gamble between life and oblivion. When she finally emerged, battered and singed, from the ruins of the outpost, the encrypted data secured in her pack, the name Ghostfire, had taken on a new meaning. It was no longer a joke whispered in the mess halls. It was a warning broadcast on stolen Dominion channels and scrawled hastily in rebel bulletins. Enemy commanders coordinated patrols around the spectral thread of Ghostfire, knowing that where she walked, destruction and defiance followed. Back at the rebel command center, Kara's arrival was met with a mixture of awe and concern. Her body bore the marks of battle burns, cuts, and bruises, but her eyes burned brighter than ever with the fire of determination. As she handed over the data to the rebellion strategists, she knew the fight was only beginning. The Obsidian Lance plans revealed a chilling truth. The Dominion intended to crush the rebellion by targeting its scattered homeworlds, one by one, with unparalleled precision. Time was slipping away like stardust through her fingers. Yet even as the weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders, Kara embraced the role that fate had thrust upon her. She was no longer the clumsy recruit who'd earned a mocking nickname. She was Ghostfire, the ember of rebellion, a living symbol of hope and terror woven into the very fabric of the Orion Expanse's darkest nights. Every shadow she vanished into, every flare of plasma that lit the void, whispered a single truth. The fight for freedom was far from over, and the enemy would soon learn to fear the ghost that burned with fire. As she stared out into the star-studded abyss from the command tower's observation deck, Kara allowed herself a fleeting moment of reflection. The cold void beyond the reinforced glass was a canvas of infinite possibilities, some dark, some bright, but all shaped by the choices she and her comrades would make in the days to come. The rebellion was fragile, a flicker against the Dominion's overwhelming might. Yet in that fragile flame lay the promise of something greater. And Kara Voss, known once as a joke, would be the blaze that lit the way. The code name was no longer a joke. It was a warning. The flickering holomap on the command table pulsed faintly, tracing the routes of Dominion patrols and rebel cells scattered across the Orion Expanse. Kara's fingers hovered above the display, her mind working through scenarios and contingencies. The name Ghostfire echoed in her head, a reminder not only of who she was, but of what she represented in a galaxy steeped in fear and rebellion. This was more than a title, it was a mantle weighted with expectation and danger, one that pulled her further into the shadows of a war that consumed everything it touched. The rebellion's resources were thin, their alliances tenuous, and the Dominion's grasp tightening like an iron vice. Every day brought fresh losses, colonies crushed under orbital bombardments, communication networks severed, families torn apart by merciless enforcers who answered only to the cold logic of control and expansion. And yet, despite the odds, Kara's spirit refused to yield. She had learned to harness the sting of loss, the cold bite of fear, and transmute it into something far more dangerous, unyielding resolve. Her path forward was illuminated by whispers and rumors of a Dominion experiment unlike any other, a bioengineered weapon, a hybrid of flesh and machine, designed to hunt and eradicate insurgents with surgical precision. Intelligence suggested it was hidden deep within the Dominion's most fortified space station, Arkham's Reach, a fortress so heavily shielded and guarded it was deemed impenetrable by many. But Kara wasn't like many. The thought of this weapon turning her people into dust was unacceptable. The rebellion needed a hero, a ghost that could slip past the eyes of the Dominion and dismantle the threat from within. Tonight, Kara would lead a small strike team on the most dangerous mission of her life. Their goal: infiltrate Arkham's Reach, gather intelligence on this weapon, and if possible, sabotage the station's defenses before the Dominion could unleash it upon the rebellion. The odds were brutal failure meant death or worse, capture and endless torment at the hands of the Dominion's interrogators. But retreat was not an option. The rebellion's survival depended on the success of this mission. As the command center buzzed with activity technicians poring over star charts, engineers tweaking weapons systems, medics prepping supplies, Kara stood apart, silent and focused. The weight of command pressed down on her, not as a burden, but as a fierce source of strength. Her team trusted her, their lives depending on every decision she made, every risk she calculated. Her eyes drifted to a worn photograph tucked inside her flight suit pocket, a faded image of her sister, the last piece of family she carried through the chaos. That memory steeled her nerves. She would not fail, not now, not ever. The mission briefing was terse but clear. Stealth was paramount. The strike team would use experimental cloaking tech to slip past the station's outer defenses, relying on speed and precision. Kara's plan was to divide their forces, a small group to disable the station's communication arrays while she and two others would infiltrate the core to locate and neutralize the weapon. It was a gamble, a knife-edge strategy with no margin for error. Yet it was exactly the kind of audacious strike the rebellion needed to shake the Dominion's confidence. Hours before the operation, Kara wandered the shadowed corridors of the rebel base, her footsteps muffled by the soft hum of machinery. The sterile walls felt suffocating, the dim lights casting long shadows that flickered like ghosts around her. She paused by a window overlooking the jagged canyons carved into Caliban IV's surface, where rebel outposts clung precariously to rocky outcrops like scars on a wounded planet. The distant stars blinked cold and indifferent, vast witnesses to a war that raged silently beneath their gaze. Her mind replayed the moments that had forged her into the figure known as Ghostfire. She remembered the whispered doubts of her peers, the sneers behind closed doors, the sting of underestimation that had haunted her early days. But she also remembered the small victories missions where she had outwitted Dominion patrols, saved comrades from certain death, and carved a path through enemy lines when all seemed lost. Every success was a thread weaving her legend, every scar a testament to survival. The joke had long since faded into history, replaced by a reputation that inspired both hope and fear. As the hours wore on, Kara's team gathered in the launch bay, clad in sleek, matte black armor designed to absorb sensor scans and blend into the void. The experimental cloaking devices thrummed softly on their wrists, promises of invisibility that might mean the difference between life and oblivion. Faces illuminated by the pale glow of helmet HUDs, her team's expressions were masks of grim determination. They had all lost too much to fail now. The ship that would carry them to Arkham's Reach was a small, nondescript stealth craft, built for speed and evasion rather than firepower. Its hull was scarred from countless skirmishes, a silent witness to the rebellion's relentless fight. As the engines powered up, the vibration thrummed through Kara's bones, a reminder of the relentless march toward destiny. She took a deep breath, steadying the storm of thoughts inside her mind. This mission would define her not as the girl who once stumbled with a flare, but as the ghost who struck from the shadows with fire in her heart. As the stealth craft slipped into the void, swallowed by the endless night between stars, Kara allowed herself a brief, silent prayer not to gods or legends, but to the memory of those who had fallen and the future she vowed to protect. Ghostfire was no longer a joke. She was the rebellion's razor edge, the ember that would ignite a revolution, and the warning the Dominion would never forget. Chapter 2. Into the Heart of Shadows. The stealth craft slid through the ink-black void like a ghost, its hull cloaked in the latest rebel technology designed to evade even the most advanced Dominion sensors. Outside the viewport, the stars shimmered cold and distant, silent witnesses to the deadly gamble unfolding within the fragile confines of this vessel. Kara Voss sat rigid in the pilot's seat, her gaze fixed on the holographic display that flickered with data streams and star maps. Every heartbeat resonated through her like a warning drum, an echo of the danger lurking ahead. Arkham's Reach was no ordinary station. It was the Dominion's crown jewel, a fortress that hung like a malignant star on the edge of known space, its defenses rumored to be as lethal as the black holes that dotted the nearby nebula. Inside the craft, her small team moved with silent precision, suited in adaptive armor that shifted colors subtly to match the surroundings within the ship's dim lighting. Each soldier was a living weapon, their faces masked behind visors that reflected the pale glow of mission data. They knew what was at stake, not just their lives, but the survival of entire colonies, families, and the fragile hope of a galaxy yearning for freedom. Yet despite the gravity, there was an electric tension, a sharpened edge of anticipation that cut through the claustrophobia. Kara's voice was steady as she briefed them one last time. Remember, stealth is our ally. No alarms, no fights unless absolutely necessary. We slip in, gather the intel, and strike the station's core. The Obsidian Lance cannot be allowed to fall into active deployment. The ship's engines hummed lower as they approached Arkham's Reach, a sprawling latticework of docks, shield generators, and weapon arrays that gleamed like a beast's armored scales. The station rotated slowly, its outer rings bristling with missile turrets and sensor towers that tracked every shift in the cosmic darkness. For decades, it had been the Dominion's bastion of power, a place where the seeds of conquest were nurtured and launched. To infiltrate, it was tantamount to walking into the jaws of a star dragon, but Kara had no choice. With a final scan confirming no immediate sensor locks, the craft dipped deeper into the shadow of the station's massive hull, activating the cloaking device with a soft pulse that rendered them nearly invisible to external detection. The surrounding void seemed to warp and shimmer as the technology bent light around them, a fragile bubble of invisibility in a sea of dangers. As they slipped through docking bays and maintenance tunnels rarely used except for emergency repairs, Kara's mind raced with tactical possibilities and contingencies. Each breath was measured, each movement calculated. Within Arkham's Reach, the cold heart of Dominion control pulsed with mechanized efficiency. Automated sentries glided silently through the corridors, their ocular sensors sweeping for any anomaly. The air was sterile and recycled, a synthetic purity designed to mask the presence of decay and death beneath the station's gleaming surfaces. The few human operators visible moved with robotic discipline, their faces a mask of duty devoid of warmth. The station was a city unto itself, a crucible where science and warfare fused into instruments of absolute dominance. Kara's team disembarked silently into the maintenance shafts, their footsteps muffled by reinforced boots designed to suppress sound. The corridors here were narrow and unyielding, veins of metal and circuitry that carried power and information through the station's core. They split into their designated teams swiftly, communicating via subvocal comms encrypted against interception. Kara led her trio down a series of labyrinthine passages toward the station's command core, the suspected housing of the Obsidian Lance's control systems. Every corner held potential ambush, every shadow a silent threat. The hum of machinery and distant clangs echoed like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, one that could awaken and crush them in moments. Her partner, a seasoned recon specialist named Jalen, moved ahead with practiced ease, deploying sensor drones that slipped silently through vents and ducts. Their artificial eyes scanned for traps, security measures, or patrols that might compromise their mission. Kara's other companion, Mira, was the team's tech expert. Her fingers danced over portable hacking modules, ready to breach locked terminals or override defenses. Together, they formed a balance of offense and defense, each relying on the other's strengths to navigate the hostile labyrinth. The deeper they ventured, the heavier the atmosphere became with tension. Electronic locks clicked open, doors slid aside revealing chambers lined with monitors and cryptic consoles, the language of Dominion code scrolling endlessly. Kara's eyes absorbed every detail, piecing together the puzzle of the station's inner workings. As they neared the core, the air grew warmer, tinged with ozone and the faint hum of energy surges. This was the nerve center, the place where power was both generated and wielded like a weapon. Suddenly, the silence shattered, a sharp crackling in their comms, a flicker of movement caught in the corner of Kara's eye. A patrol of Dominion enforcers rounded the bend ahead, heavy boots thudding against the metal floor, energy rifles at the ready. Time slowed as Kara's instincts flared. She signaled a halt, pressing her palm against the wall, feeling the vibrations of the approaching threat. The team slipped into the shadows, blending with the darkness, hearts pounding in rhythm with the station's electric pulse. The enforcers moved with mechanical precision, scanning the corridor with unblinking eyes. One paused directly where Kara's team crouched, the heat signature of their cloaks barely masked by the station's complex temperature controls. A bead of sweat traced a path down Kara's temple as the enforcer's gaze lingered for a terrifying moment, then shifted away. The patrol passed, leaving the trio frozen in place, breaths shallow and minds razor-sharp. They moved again, quicker now, deeper into the belly of the beast. Reaching the core's main chamber, Kara's team found themselves before a massive console array glowing with an eerie blue light. This was it, the control center for the Obsidian Lance. Mira stepped forward, fingers flying over the console as she began the delicate work of breaching security protocols. Time was a luxury they did not have. The slightest error could trigger alarms and doom them all. Kara's eyes scanned the chamber for escape routes, weak points, any advantage to exploit should things go awry. Minutes stretched into an eternity as Mira worked, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then, with a soft beep, the console unlocked, revealing detailed schematics of the Obsidian Lance. Kara's heart sank as she absorbed the scale of the weapon, an orbital bombardment system capable of targeting entire planets with devastating precision. The implications were horrifying. If the Dominion deployed this, entire worlds would fall in mere minutes, civilizations wiped out before they could mount a defense. But there was more. Embedded in the schematics was a secondary program, an AI control matrix designed to learn from combat data and autonomously improve the weapon's targeting algorithms. It was a machine with no empathy, no hesitation, programmed only to kill. Kara's mind raced. Destroying the station outright was impossible without catastrophic collateral damage. But if they could corrupt or hijack the AI, they might cripple the weapon before its first strike. A sudden alarm shattered the fragile comm, a red light flashing urgently as Dominion security systems detected the breach. The chamber's doors hissed shut, sealing them inside. The battle was no longer avoidable. Kara drew her pulse rifle, voice sharp. Defensive positions. Mira, finish the upload. We need control over that AI before reinforcements arrive. Outside, the pounding of heavy boots and the mechanical whir of security drones filled the air. The fight to survive had begun. Amid the blazing corridors and flashing red lights, Ghostfire fought not just with weaponry, but with the fire of defiance that had once been a joke whispered among friends. Now, it was a roar that echoed in the very heart of the Dominion, a promise that freedom would not be extinguished without a fight. Chapter 3: The Blaze Behind Enemy Lines. The deafening alarm still echoed in the cramped command chamber, the harsh red glow painting the cold metal walls as Kara Voss crouched behind a console, the pulse rifle in her hand steady, but her breath coming fast and measured. Every nerve screamed with the urgency of survival as Dominion security forces closed in, their footsteps a pounding drumbeat of impending death. Outside the reinforced doors, the hiss of airlocks cycling open revealed the arrival of heavily armored enforcers, their energy weapons humming with lethal promise. The confined space was a cage, a crucible where the fate of countless worlds would be decided by the iron will of a handful of rebels. Mira, the tech specialist, was bent low over the terminal, her fingers flying across the interface with practiced speed as she fought to wrest control of the Obsidian Lance's AI matrix. The air between them vibrated with tension, and the scent of burning circuitry, a tangible reminder of the razor's edge they walked. Time was slipping away like grains of cosmic dust. Every second spent here was a second closer to discovery and annihilation. Kara's mind was a whirlwind of strategy and calculation, balancing offense and defense in a desperate ballet. Every decision held the weight of lives and legacies. The Dominion soldiers burst into the room like a tide of steel and cold fury, their shouts harsh commands in the guttural language of conquest. The rebels responded with controlled precision. Kara's pulse rifle flared in the dim light, plasma bolts streaking through the air, igniting sparks as they struck the armored plating of their foes. The crackle of energy weapons was punctuated by grunts and the dull thud of bodies meeting unforgiving floors. Yet despite the chaos, the rebels fought with a grim determination, each movement choreographed to buy Mira the precious moments she needed. Jalen, the recon specialist, was a blur of motion darting from cover to cover, laying down suppressive fire with calculated bursts, his eyes scanning for weaknesses in the enemy's advance. Kara's gaze never left Mira, willing her to succeed. The AI matrix was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of the Dominion's cold, mechanical dominion, an unfeeling instrument designed to snuff out resistance without hesitation or mercy. To hijack it was to turn the enemy's greatest strength into a fatal weakness. The code she sought to inject was a virus crafted in the hidden labs of the rebellion, a digital flame designed to spread through the AI circuits and unravel its lethal purpose. The air grew thick with the acrid smell of ozone and melting circuitry as energy weapons scorched the chamber surfaces. Kara's arms ached from the weight of her rifle, her muscles burning with exertion. She felt the sting of a graze along her shoulder, a reminder that even the most skilled fighter was mortal. Yet the fire in her veins refused to dim. Ghostfire was not just a name, it was the conflagration that would consume the Dominion's grip on the galaxy, the spark that ignited hope where none dared to flicker. Suddenly, Myra's fingers froze, the terminal's glow flickering erratically. "They're overriding my access," she hissed, voice tight with panic. Kara's mind raced. The Dominion's cyber defenses were formidable, adaptive, and ruthless. If they regained full control, the AI could retaliate instantly, turning the station's weapons against them. She barked orders. "Jalen, cover Mira. I'll hold the entrance." The rebels tightened their formation as more enforcers poured in, their numbers swelling like a dark tide. The battle turned brutal, close quarters, the clang of metal against metal, the whine of energy blades slicing through air thick with desperation. Kara fought with the ferocity of a cornered wolf, every shot precise, every move a calculated strike. Her thoughts flickered to her sister, to the home she fought to protect, and the countless innocents who depended on the rebellion's fragile flame. Despite the odds, Myra's fingers danced anew across the controls, weaving complex algorithms and digital subterfuge. The virus began to seep into the AI's core, a creeping blaze of corruption designed to blind and cripple. The room trembled as the station's systems faltered, defense turrets seized, communications scrambled, power grids fluctuated. The Obsidian Lance's deadly gaze faltered for the first time since its inception. But victory was far from certain. With a roar, a squad of elite Dominion guards, clad in advanced combat exosuits, stormed the chamber. Their weapons pulsed with enhanced lethality, and their presence shifted the balance of the fight. Kara's team fought back to back, their breath ragged, sweat mingling with the grime of battle. She caught a glimpse of Mira faltering under fire, a blast knocking her to the floor, a spark of pain lighting her eyes. Without hesitation, Kara dove to her side, dragging her to cover as Jalen unleashed a barrage that forced the attackers to pause. "Stay with me," Kara urged, checking Myra's injuries. "We're so close." Mira nodded weakly, her fingers twitching toward the console. The virus was nearly uploaded, just moments more. The sound of reinforcements pounding down the corridors was relentless. The station itself seemed to groan under the strain of the internal sabotage, alarms wailing a siren song of impending doom. Kara's mind was a maelstrom of fear and determination. If they failed here, the Obsidian Lance would awaken fully, and the rebellion would be crushed beneath a rain of orbital fire. Summoning every ounce of her strength and cunning, Kara gave the command that could only mean one thing: fight to the last breath, hold the line at all costs. The rebels' pulse rifles sang death songs into the advancing waves, but even as bodies fell, more took their place. The air was a haze of plasma smoke and charged tension. At the critical moment, Myra's fingers struck the final sequence, and a surge of energy coursed through the console. The virus exploded into the AI systems like wildfire, fracturing code, scrambling protocols, and severing control links. The Obsidian Lance's targeting systems shut down, its deadly gaze extinguished, at least for now. The station shuddered violently as automated defenses misfired, structural integrity wavering under cascading system failures. Kara grabbed Mira, hauling her to her feet as the room filled with the ominous sound of rupturing metal and emergency bulkhead seals activating. Their extraction window was closing rapidly. With no time to spare, Kara led the sprint through labyrinthine corridors now transformed into a chaos of failing lights, smoke, and collapsing infrastructure. Dominion forces pursued relentlessly, but the station's faltering systems created deadly hazards for both sides. Kara's heart pounded in time with her rapid steps as she guided her team toward the extraction point. Emerging into the docking bay, the stealth craft awaited them, engines primed for departure. But as they boarded, the station groaned again, large sections collapsing, fires raging unchecked. The rebellion had dealt a crippling blow, but at a cost that echoed in Kara's aching muscles and the grim faces of her comrades. As the ship slipped away from Arkham's reach, leaving behind a fortress crippled and silent, but not defeated, Kara allowed herself a moment of quiet. The mission was a success, but the war was far from over. The Dominion would retaliate with a fury that would scorch the stars themselves. Yet, in the heart of that darkness, Ghostfire burned brighter than ever, a blazing symbol of hope, defiance, and the unyielding spirit of those who dared to fight for freedom behind enemy lines. Chapter 4: The Ember That Ignited the Galaxy. The void outside the rebel stealth craft was a canvas of cold stars and swirling nebulae, a silent expanse that belied the inferno raging within the hearts of those aboard. Kara Voss leaned heavily against the console, the pulse rifle slung across her back, every muscle trembling with exhaustion, adrenaline, and a fierce fire that refused to be quenched. The mission against Arkham's Reach had been a brutal symphony of violence and calculated risk, each note played with desperate precision. But now, as the ship slipped away from the crippled Dominion fortress, the weight of what had been accomplished and what still lay ahead settled like a heavy cloak. The virus they had unleashed into the Obsidian Lance's AI core was more than just code. It was a spark, a digital wildfire designed to cripple the Dominion's deadliest weapon before it could be unleashed upon the countless worlds that depended on the rebellion's fragile shield. But the Dominion was far from defeated. The station, though crippled, still hung in the void like a wounded predator, and their vengeance would be swift and merciless. Kara's thoughts spiraled back to the moment she had first earned the name Ghostfire, the flaring plasma incident during training that had once been a joke whispered behind closed doors. That joke had grown into a legend whispered across battlefields and command centers, a symbol of defiance and lethal cunning that terrified Dominion commanders. It was a mantle she wore now, one forged in the fires of sacrifice and resilience, a beacon for those who fought in shadows. As the rebel ship coursed through the starry gulf towards safe space, communications crackled to life. The voice of Commander Relene, a steely-eyed veteran who led the rebellion's fleet, filling the cabin. Voss, report. Status. Kara's voice was steady despite the weariness. Mission accomplished. Arkham's Reach compromised. Obsidian Lance AI corrupted, and offline for now. Extraction successful, though casualties were sustained. The pause on the other end was heavy with unsaid truths. This changes everything, Rylan finally said. The Dominion will retaliate. We must prepare for the storm. Preparations began immediately. The rebellion's ships, scattered and outgunned, mobilized under the shadow of looming retribution. Every soldier, every mechanic, every civilian who dared dream of freedom braced for the coming tempest. Kara was summoned to the War Council, a chamber filled with tired eyes and determined faces. There, the true cost of their victory was laid bare: plans to reinforce vulnerable colonies, strategies to outmaneuver Dominion fleets, and the grim reality that the Obsidian Lance was only one weapon in a vast arsenal of terror. Despite the exhaustion, Kara was resolute. The virus she had helped unleash was a beacon, a declaration that the rebellion would not bow quietly. Ghostfire was no longer just a name. It was a warning etched into the very fabric of the Dominion's nightmare. As she looked around the room, seeing faces lined with fatigue but shining with hope, she understood the true power they wielded: the power to ignite change, to fan the flames of rebellion until the stars themselves burned with freedom's fire. But the war was far from over. The Dominion's wrath was a storm on the horizon, and the rebellion's ember must become an inferno. Kara's journey from the girl mocked for a single mistake to the ghost that haunted enemy nightmares was a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who dared to fight when all seemed lost. And as the fleet surged forward, carrying the promise of resistance, she knew the legend of Ghostfire was only beginning. The rebel fleet's engines hummed in the dim light of the command bridge, each vessel a fragile beacon of hope against the vast Dominion armada that now churned like a dark storm across the Orion expanse. Kara stood amid the swirl of holographic star charts and battle plans, her figure etched sharp against the flickering projections. The virus she had helped unleash within Arkham's reach had been a devastating strike, but it was only the opening salvo in a war that threatened to consume countless worlds. The rebellion's fragile victories had come at a harrowing cost, yet her spirit burned brighter than ever, fueled by a fierce, unrelenting fire. Around her, officers spoke in urgent tone, strategists debating defensive lines, commanders calling for reinforcements, medics coordinating triage efforts. Kara's gaze lingered on the battered flight suit she wore, its scars a testament to battles fought in shadows and flames. Each mark was a story, a memory of sacrifice and survival. The name, Ghostfire, once a derisive joke born from a single flare gone awry, had transformed into a legend whispered in fear across Dominion strongholds. It was a warning that even in the darkest corners of occupied space, defiance still thrived. As the fleet prepared to engage, Kara was summoned to a private briefing with Commander Rylan. The veteran's eyes were heavy with the weight of command, yet within them burned a fierce resolve. "Boss," Rylan said, voice low but steady, "the Dominion won't take this lightly. Their next move will be ruthless. We need someone to lead a strike deep behind enemy lines, to cripple their supply chains and buy us time." Kara's lips tightened. She knew what that meant: another mission where the odds were stacked impossibly high, where every step forward risked death or worse. But she did not hesitate. "I'll lead it," she replied simply. The plan was audacious. A small team, handpicked for skill and stealth, would infiltrate a heavily fortified Dominion logistics hub, an artery critical to their war machine. Disrupting it would cripple the Dominion's ability to regroup and retaliate effectively. It was a mission designed for Ghostfire, a shadow within shadows, a flame that could ignite chaos from within. Kara spent the next hours preparing, her mind sharpening with tactical maps, intelligence reports, and every scrap of knowledge she could gather. Her team assembled quietly, faces grim but unyielding. Each understood the stakes. None expected to return unchanged. The infiltration was a perilous descent into the belly of the beast. Kara's team slipped through asteroid fields and sensor nets, cloaked in silence as they approached the Dominion stronghold. The station loomed before them, a fortress of steel and firepower, bristling with defenses that could pulverize an entire squadron. Yet, guided by Kara's unerring instincts and the virus still coursing through Dominion networks, they found cracks in the armor, hidden access points, dormant security protocols vulnerable to exploitation. Every move was a dance on the razor's edge between discovery and destruction. Inside the station, the team navigated labyrinthine corridors and security grids, neutralizing patrols with silent efficiency. Kara's pulse rifle was a whisper of death, her commands crisp and decisive. They reached the core supply bays where munitions and fuel stores pulsed with lethal potential. With precise sabotage, they set charges and unleashed cyber attacks that cascaded through Dominion systems like wildfire, igniting chaos that crippled communications and crippled defensive deployments. The stronghold was plunged into disarray, its heart bleeding fire and smoke. As alarms blared and reinforcements scrambled, Kara's team fought a desperate retreat, navigating collapsing tunnels and firestorms that threatened to consume them. The blast waves rocked the station as charges detonated, ripping through steel and circuitry, a violent testament to Rebellion's fury. With relentless determination, they reached their extraction point, the stolen data and sabotage reports clutched tight. Boarding the waiting shuttle, they blasted away into the void, leaving behind a fortress crippled and screaming in ruin. The return to Rebel space was a pilgrimage through silence and shadow. Kara's body ached, her mind swimming with the weight of loss and victory intertwined. The fleet awaited their return, celebrations tempered by grief and resolve. Ghostfire had struck again, not just a name, but a force reshaping the tide of war. In the aftermath, as the Rebel Council convened beneath the flickering light of distant stars, Kara stood tall among heroes and survivors. The Dominion's grip was weakening, their nightmares seated deep within the hearts of their enemies. Kara's journey from a clumsy recruit burdened by a mocking nickname to a blazing legend feared across galaxies was a testament to the power of defiance and hope. The rebellion was no longer just a flicker in the dark, it was a wildfire, ignited by Ghostfire's relentless blaze. The story of Kara Voss, the girl who carried Rebellion's future while walking through firewood, echo through the cosmos, a warning and a promise. Where there is fire, there is light, and where there is light, tyranny cannot survive. The ember had ignited the galaxy,